Hey everybody, this is Mr. Regner, and this is our Chapter 10 Practice Assessment. So you'll find this in your books on page 449 and 450, and just like some of my other videos, the idea here is that you can hopefully use this to kind of practice and use what you need to use. I'm going to mark each question with a number and then circle that number, and then you can kind of follow along so you can skim through the video to find the questions that you need the most assistance with. So first off, number 1. It says, which line plot shows the data? Well, there's all the data that's listed there. If you look at that data here. And then we have some multiple choice options. So first thing that I'm doing when I look at this is I'm looking at my number line, and all of them begin with 7 and end with 10, right? So I want to look and see and maybe make a note for myself to see where these dots are located. So I see that there's an 8 here, there's an 8 there. So I should have 2 dots above the 8. There's 2 dots above the 8, 2 dots above the 8, 2 dots above the 8, 2 dots above the 8. Well, that doesn't help me. Let me go to 7.5. There's a 7.5 here, and there's no other 7.5. So above 7.5, I should have 1 dot. Oop, this one has 2 dots. This one has 2 dots. This one has 2 dots. So look at that, immediately, just process of elimination, I've narrowed it down to option A. If I continued on through this, 8 3/4, I have 1 there, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I should have 6 dots above 8 3/4. And I think that would help me eliminate some of them, because here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 dots. Here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dots. Here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 dots. And here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right, so basically we just want to look at the data set that we're given and pick our best answer. There's not a lot of work that I can really show here other than showing you the answer is A. Okay, let's move on. Take a look at number 2. Number 2 says the line plot shows the results from a survey asking parents how many children they have in school. How many parents have 2 children in school? Guys, all we're doing is we're looking at our chart here, right? And it says there's 1 child in school, 2 children in school, 3 children in school, and 4. We don't care about 1 or 3 or 4. We just want to know how many parents have 2 children in school. And so for this, I'm literally just counting dots. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 6 parents that have selected that they have 2 children in school. Let's move on and take a look at number 3. I hope you're noticing already by now, there's not a lot of work that goes into this. It's just understanding how the line plots work. Number 3 says, Georgiana made a line plot of the amount of time she spent practicing her violin each day in the past 2 weeks. So we have the time spent practicing in hours, and we have anywhere from 1/2 hour to all the way up to 1.5 hours. So letter A says, what is the difference between the greatest and least times spent practicing? So for letter A, I'm going to take the greatest amount of time, which again was 1 1/2 hour, and I'm going to subtract that away from the least amount of time, which is 1/2 hour. Now there's not a lot of work that I need to do here. It's just 1.5 minus 1/2. That equals 1. So 1 hour is the difference for letter A. Letter B, what's the most common amount of time she spent practicing? Well, let's look at the graph. Look at our line plot. All right, she spent 1/2 hour 3 days, 1 hour 3 days, 1 1/4 1 day, 1 1/2 1 day, but the most common time is 3/4 hours. So for letter B, 3/4 of an hour is the most common practicing time that she has. That's the tallest tower. Letter C, it says, what is the total amount of time Georgiana practiced? Write and solve an equation to show your work. All right, so now we have to actually get into some real math work here. We're going to be adding together all the times, right? So I have, let's see, 1/2 plus 1/2 plus 1/2. I could have done that as 1/2 times 3, right? I'm going to do that actually for this next one. This next one, remember, for 3/4, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times she did this. So I'm going to go 6 times 3/4. Then I'm going to add that with 3 times 1. Because she spent 1 hour 3 times. And then I've kind of run out of room here. I should have given myself more room. But I'll kind of carry this down here. We have 1 1/4 and 1/2. So 1 1/4 plus 1 1/2. So I'm going to add these all together. So 1/2 plus 1/2 plus 1/2, that's 1 1/2. Just kind of simplifying this down. 6 times 3/4, think of that as 6/1. And then simplify, right? 2 goes into 4 and 2 goes into 3. 2 goes into 4 twice, 2 goes into 6 3 times. That's 3 times 3, which is 9, and 1 times 2, which is 2. 3 times 1 is obviously 3, and then I have 1 1/4 and 1 1/2. I guess I could add those together, but I'll keep them separate for now. Oops. 1 1/2. Right? I'm just adding these all together. Now, if I look at 9/2, that's an improper fraction. I could think of that as a mixed number. 2 goes into 9 4 times. There'd be 1 left over. So that's really 4 1/2. I have 1 1/2 plus 4 1/2. That would be 6. And I'm kind of doing this step by step, and you might even be able to do this quicker with less steps, and that's okay as well. 6 plus 3 is 9, right? 9 plus 1 1/4 plus 1 1/2. If I get common denominators, I can add them together. The common denominator would be 4, so I can think of this as 1 2/4, right? That would be 2 3/4. And then I can add 9 plus 2, which is 11 3/4. So she's practicing for 11 3/4 hours total. Guys, that's kind of a lot of time invested into that, but overall not a very difficult problem. It's just a matter of adding them together. Let's move on. We're now on page 2, which I guess is page 450, with question number 4. It says, Ashraf and Melanie cut the rope into different lengths for an art project. They made a line plot to display their data. So we're going to use this information for numbers 4, 5, and 6. So make sure you're using the right data as you're looking at it. Number 4 says, which is the most common length of rope? Well, again, we're looking for the tallest tower, and that would be this one. So now we need to think, okay, what is that number, right? Well, here's 1, and here's 2. Count the number of spaces in between 1 and 2. Let's see, there's 1 space, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 8 spaces. So all of these are divided into eighths, right? This would be 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8. Remember, 4/8 is the same as 1/2. 5/8, 6/8. So this is the tallest tower. It's on 1 6/8. But you won't find that in your multiple choice options because 6/8 can be reduced down. Right? So for number 4, it's 1 6/8. But remember, we can simplify 6/8 because 2 goes into 6 and 2 goes into 8. We can simplify that down to 1 3/4. It turns out that 1 3/4 is definitely an option. It's letter B. Look at number 5. It says, which is the total length of rope represented by the data? Well, in order to answer this question, we need to consider the dots. All right, this is kind of like question number 3, part C. We have 3 dots on 1 1/2. So 3 times 1 1/2. We have 5 dots on 1 3/4. Just multiplying them together. I have 4 dots on 2. And again, I'm finding that I'm running out of room. I should have written smaller if I could have. We have 2 dots on what would be 2 and 1/8. Oh, here's what I can do. Watch this. Huh? You like that? 2 and 1/8. And then there's 1 dot, which would be on 2 and, let me count this up now. That'd be 1/8, 2/8, 3/8. That's 1 times 2 and 3/8. So now, once again, big, long addition problem with some multiplication mixed in. So I can multiply. Here I have 3 times 1.5. You could turn these into improper fractions, remember? Think of that as 3 over 1 times 2 times 1, which is 2, plus 1, which is 3, 3 over 2. Think of this as improper fractions. 5 over 1 times 4 times 1, which is 4, plus 3, which is 7. That's 7/4. And then over here, 4 times 2, well, that's just 8. And then 2 times 1 and 1/8, that'd be 2 over 1. And then 8 times 2 is 16, plus 1 is 17. That's 17/8. And then 1 times 2 and 3/8, well, that's just 2 and 3/8. If I can write it correctly, right? So I'm just kind of simplifying this down step by step by step. Now I can multiply. 3 times 3 is 9, and 1 times 2 is 2. That's 9 over 2. 5 times 7 is 35. 1 times 4 is 4. 8 is still 8. 2 times 17 is going to be 34. Yep. And then 1 times 8 is 8. And then this is still 2 and 3/8. Okay, now I'm at the addition part. So remember, common denominators is key. So it looks like a common denominator for all of these could be 8. Between 2 and 4 and 8. So maybe I'll go that route. I'm going to turn 9 halves into something out of 8. Since I'm taking 2 times 4 to get 8, I need to take 9 times 4. That'd be 36 over 8. And then here, since 4 times 2 equals 8, I'm going to take 35 times 2. That'd be 70 over 8. Just for the sake of argument here, I'm going to keep 8 as 8. And I'll add that on probably at the end. I already have 34/8. And I suppose I can keep that as 2 and 3/8. Now I've got common denominators. I can give myself more room with my page and combine, right? So I have 36 plus 70. That's going to be 106/8. Over here I have 34 plus 3/8. This is going to sound weird, but I'm going to keep that as a mixed number. I'll keep the whole number 2. 34 plus 3 is 37/8. Right? Just whittling it down. I can combine my 8 and my 2 to make 10. So I'm going to have 10. I can combine 106 over 8 plus 37 over 8. That would be, let me do the math here in my head. 7 plus 6 is 13. 3 plus 1 is 4. Plus that 100. That's 143 over 8. So now I have like a weird mixed number with an improper fraction. I want to take that improper fraction, turn it into a mixed number. So let me start over here. I've got 10 and 143 over 8. It's going to take 143 over 8 and turn it into a mixed number by dividing. 143 divided by 8. 8 goes into 14 one time. That'd be 8. I'll subtract. I end up with 6. Bring down my 3. 8 goes into 63 7 times. 7 times 8 is 56. Sorry. Subtract. I end up with 7 as my remainder. That'd be 7/8. So 143 over 8 is actually 17 and 7/8. I'll add that with the 10. I come up with 27 and 7/8. Now, if you look at all your options, boy, that was a lot of work, right? but it's just adding. Got to get those common denominators. We see option C says 27 and 7/8. So option C. Moving on to number 6. Number 6 says, suppose 2 more pieces of rope are cut to be 2 feet. Would the value that occurred most often change? Explain your reasoning. Well, let's look at it. Here's 2 feet. If we add 2 more dots onto there, bloop, bloop, right? There were 4, now there's 6. Does the value that occurs most often change? Well, let's see. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here. If we added 2 more, there'd be 2 here. So yeah, it would change. And we can explain our reasoning because we're adding 2 more. 4 plus 2 equals 6, and 6 is greater than 5. That's a hard one to really write out here, but hopefully that makes sense for you. Let's move on and take a look at number 7. For number 7, it says Terry works at a bakery. This morning he recorded how many ounces of each loaf of bread weighed. All right, so we've got all these different weights. Notice they're kind of similar. They're not all totally way bigger or way smaller, right? It says letter A, make a line plot for the data set. And I love this because they've given us the line. So we've got 22, 22 and a half. And I have to do some work here just to recreate it on my page. But you won't have to do that because it's already going to be there. And of course, in true form, I've not really given myself enough space. All right, so there's 24 and a half. There's 25. Okay, so I've kind of recreated what they've given you. I'm just going to plot the points. Now, it may help you to put these points in order, like put the data in order first, and that way you can tally them up. Or you can kind of plot them in the order that you see them. Just be very careful not to miss one or accidentally forget one. So I have 23 and a half. That's my first one. There's 23 and a half. There's my dot. I would cross that off. Here's 24. Plot that. Plot it. Cross it off. 23 and 3/4. Here's 23 and 3/4. Plot it. Cross it off. 23 and a half. Again, plot it. Cross it off. 24 and a quarter. Plot it. Cross it off. 23 and a half. Plot it. Cross it off. 24. Again, plot it. Cross it off. 23 and a quarter. Plot it. Cross it off. 24 and a half. Plot it. Cross it off. 24 and a half. Oops, 22 and 3/4. All right, 22 and 3/4 would be here. Plot it. Cross it off. 24 and a quarter. 24 and a quarter. Plot it. Cross it off. And 23 and a half. Plot it. Cross it off. I've got all my data set there. I'd want to double check that to make sure 100% that I'm correct. For letter B, it says Morgan said the difference between the heaviest loaf of bread and the lightest loaf of bread is 1.5 ounces. Do you agree with Morgan? Man, I don't know about this Morgan. We better do the math here and check. So the heaviest loaf of bread was 24 and a half. And the lightest loaf of bread was 22 and 3/4. That, guys, without even really doing the math here, we might be able to make a judgment on Morgan's thoughts. He says the difference is 1.5 ounces. Am I going to take 24 and a half minus 22 and 3/4 and come up with 1 1/2? No, I'm not. In fact, if I do the math here, if I were to subtract these, I could take 1/2 and make it 2/4. Get common denominators, right? I can't take 24 and 2/4 minus 22 and 3/4, so I'd have to borrow, right? We could go through that step. This becomes 23. We'd add on 4/4 to here. I know my paper here is getting kind of jumbled up. We'd end up with 23 and 6/4 minus 22 and 3/4. When I subtract 6/4 minus 3/4, I get 3/4. 23 minus 22 is 1. It's a difference of 1 3/4 pounds. So it turns out our friend Morgan was not correct. And we can explain that by showing our math. We could have also taken 22 and 3/4 and added 1.5 and proven it's not the same as 24 and 1/2, that might have worked as well. For part C, what is the combined weight of all the loaves of bread? Oh my goodness. For this, we've got to add. This is number 7, part C. So we've got to add all these together. Well, no problem. We can do this, right? As we've seen before, it does take some time. So let's be patient here and do it step by step. So first off, we have 22 and 3/4. We're going to add that with 23 and 1/4. We're going to add that with, since there are 1, 2, 3, 4 23 and a halves. I'm going to say there's 4 23 and a halves. I'm going to add that with 23 and 3/4. I'm going to add that with 2 24s. 2 times 24. Add them together. I'm going to add that with 2 times 24 and 1/4. I'm going to add that with 24 and a half. So I've got everything represented here. Now it's a matter of doing the math, right? So let me make sure I'm in the center of my page here. I'm going to just kind of combine some of these that I can and kind of simplify it down bit by bit. Order of operations says we should multiply first, right? So I look at 2 times 24. That's going to be easy for me because that's just 48. 2 times 24 1/4, 2 times 20, or 4 times 23 and a half. Those are a little bit trickier for me. So I might even set up a multiplication problem, right? So I could do 4 times 23 and a half. Okay, as you look at this problem, you may want to think about putting them into improper fraction form. 2 times 23 is 46, plus 1 is 47. That's 47 over 2. And then 4 would be 4 over 1. Cross simplify, 2 goes into 2 once, 2 goes into 4 twice. I now have 47 times 2, which is going to be 94 over 1. Turns out that 4 times 23 and a half equals 94. Just trying to write it in there just to make it a little bit simpler and save some paper as well. For 2 times 24 1/4, my dog likes this one, 2 over 1 times 24 1/4. Think 4 times 24. Let's see, 4 times 24. He's literally like snuck into my office. He's like howling. I don't know what's going on with him. I apologize. But 4 times 24, I lost my train of thought. 4 times 24, that would be 96. And then all of that is over 4. I can multiply. 2 times 96 is... I'm going to do this off to the side. I'm not quite sure. 96 times 2. My dog's throwing me off my game. 2 times 6 is 12. 2 times 9 is 18 plus 1. It's 192. Okay, so we have 192. All of that over 4. To simplify that down, I can divide. 192 divided by 4. 4 goes into 1. Nope, it doesn't. 4 goes into 19. Yep, it does. 4 times 6 is 18. Subtracting at 1, bring down my 2. 4 goes into 12 3 times, and that is 12 with a remainder of 0. So 2 times 24 1/4 equals 63. How about that? Now we're working on simplifying everything down. So let's combine some of these things that we know. Think about common denominators. I've got a 4, a 4, a 4, and a 2. Well, I can turn 1/2 into 2/4 because those are equivalent fractions. Now this is going to make it a lot easier. So let me add up the fraction parts first, right? I have 3/4 plus 1/4, that's 1. Plus 3/4, that's 1 3/4. Plus 2/4, that's 1 5/4, or really 2 1/4. So my fraction part would equal 2 and 1/4. My whole number parts, I have 22 plus 23. That's going to be 45. 45 plus 94. Oh my goodness. Let me write this down. 45 plus 94 plus 23 plus 48 plus 63 plus 24. Again, not difficult math, but time consuming. And here I'm going to attempt something crazy. I'm going to try to add all these together in one problem. Are you ready for this? It's crazy. Always want to check your math and be very careful when you're doing this. So I have 5 plus 4, which is 9. 9 plus 3, which is 12. 12 plus 8, which is 20. 20 plus 3, which is 23. And 23 plus 4, which is 27. So my 7 down here, carry the 2. Whew, that was a tricky one, but I made it through. Let me keep going with my tens place now. 2 plus 4, which is 6. 6 plus 9, which is 15. 15 plus 2, which is 17. 17 plus 4, which is 21. 21 plus 6, which is 27. And 27 plus 2, which is 29. So I end up with 297. That's 297 plus 2 1/4. That's 299 and 1/4. Yikes, that's a lot of pounds of bread there, right? But that is letter C. And guys, that is our practice test for Chapter 10. It's really all about understanding how to read, interpret, and pull information out of some of these line plot charts. If you have any questions, always feel free to contact me. I hope this has been helpful.